And here I am, finally. So, I have no idea what I'm going to build tonight. For anyone who has attended one of my live streaming sessions before, you'll be already used to me just talking. I don't talk much sense, but there might be some wisdom in amongst all that. So I've got two choices on what to build tonight. I started building a Twitch extension last week, and I proved out how to build the Twitch extension. I just didn't finish building it. And so I was thinking about finishing that off. It's just to display my Medium articles, which you can see a link to the Medium articles at this side of the screen about here. And I wanted to display those on my Twitch feed, which is also about here, but further along. But I haven't finished doing that yet. It should be fairly simple, but over the weekend I started playing about with NestJS. So some people, well, many people have already know about NestJS. Whether anyone on this stream already knows about NestJS, that remains to be seen. Whether I know about NestJS, that also remains to be seen. But NestJS is basically a backend framework for building TypeScript applications. But I don't want to go on the Udemy course for building TypeScript applications, but is very much based on how Angular is done in the front end. I assume that's deliberate. It seems far too similar to be a coincidence. So since I really like Angular, it's opinionated, and it's opinionated in a way that I like. I figured I'd quite like to build a full stack application using basically what is Angular on the front and back. So to that end, I think I'm going to make a start on that today. The application I want to build is, it's probably just going to be another one that I'll abandon once I get bored with it. But so I've got a smart bulb above me that I got free at Angular Connect 2016. And this smart bulb is Bluetooth only. So I can connect to it directly using the app on my phone, and there was a tutorial, there was like a workshop at the time on how to build new functionality, but what I'd like is for my Twitch stream to change the color of the bulb. So there is an app called Lumia Cove that can do the same thing, but it doesn't work with a Bluetooth only bulb, at least not that I'm aware. If anyone does know, please let me know and save me all the effort. So the plan is to build something fairly simple. I can have my laptop can talk to the bulb via Bluetooth. I played about with that and had something fairly simple working using web Bluetooth, and I can also I could get my phone to do it as well, but what I want is to maybe spin up a server on my laptop that's going to talk to the bulb, change the colors, but to get the values from elsewhere. So I'll have a second API, probably hosted on Heroku, something like that, where that I'll build a Twitch extension that fires values into the Heroku API, and then I'll have something locally that's listening to those values and then updates the color of the bulb. Fairly simple, I hope. Just to demonstrate, I've got the app here on my phone, so I will attempt to change the color of the light that's being. Let's have a look. So if I change this to blue, hopefully you can now see I've got kind of a blue light on me. It messes with the focus on my camera, something fierce. Then we've got green and red. So whether I change this to be something more visible and maybe have a second camera pointing at the bulb or something, I don't know, or whether I get a bulb that maybe gives me slightly more obvious colors. It struggles with some of the colors I've noticed in terms of being able to differentiate them by just the glow. I mean, that looks quite yellow, but I don't know whether my auto white balance is maybe cancelling some of that out. So anyway, that's the plan. I get to learn a little bit about Bluetooth while I'm doing it. So yeah, so we're gonna do. I say we. I'm always saying we, but really what I mean is me. I'm going to start off by creating a new Nest application. So I'm not going to follow the instructions on here, although I'm sure the documentation here is very good. I had a bit of a dip into it and it seemed pretty reasonable. The guide I'm going to follow is, I can't drag it down to there. Let's try dragging it down to here. The guide I'm going to follow is here. So this is using NX, which is a set of what originally started, I think, as Angular tools, but has kind of evolved to framework agnostic tools. And we're going to create a new NX workspace which has Angular on the front end and Nest on the back end. So this is provided by Narwhal, I believe. Shout out to Narwhal. Thank you for providing great tools. Somewhere around here I've got a little Narwhal that I picked up at Angular Connect in 2019. I picked up two because I've got two children and I didn't want them fighting over the Narwhals. I should have picked up the same color if I wanted them to not fight over them, because I'm pretty sure I've got a pink one and a green one and they still fought over them. That's kids for you. So let's start off by trying to create a new workspace. So I had a bit of a play with this over the weekend, hopefully just to check that everything would work. I thought it would be a pretty crappy stream if I got on here and nothing worked. So hopefully it should go just as well. Before I get started, I'm going to take my watch off so that I can rest my wrist more comfortably. Right, so we're going to start with npx. So for anyone not familiar with npx, this is just a way of running an npm package that's maybe designed to be run globally. Something like ESLint, for instance, you would normally install that globally and then run the ESLint command. npx just allows you to run that same command without installing it globally. And the other thing that it does is if you've got a package that's installed in your current project, ESLint again being an example, it will make sure that you use the version that's in that project rather than using a global version which may be different. So in this case, I'm not in a project yet, so I'm just going to copy this out. So I don't want to call it my org actually, but but it's going to call it my org because let's just cancel that because I copied the line break as well. Let's just grab that. I'm going to leave the my org folder in place. Actually, no, you know what? I'm not, because I'll just end up wondering what the devil it is. Oh, it didn't get that far. Good. Okay, so I want to npx create NX workspace at latest, and I'm just going to call it bulb. So that should take a minute or so just to grab all the dependencies it needs, and so that's just going to be an empty workspace. Oh no, it's not going to be an empty workspace. It's going to ask me some questions. Good. Okay, so I'm going to go with the Angular Nest. So you can see here you could do like React Express. I'm guessing they don't have React plus Nest one because if you really liked Nest on the back end, you'd probably be using Angular on the front end because they are so very similar. So yeah, Angular Nest is what we want. Application name, that's going to be Bulb. There's probably an application out there already called Bulb as well, so hopefully my highly successful stream won't come to their attention. We're going to use Sass for any styles, so I don't really need a front end. The reason I'm going to build a front end is it's going to be easier for me to test this because I'm not familiar with the Bluetooth APIs. So there's a library called Noble that I'm planning on using, and just from when I was playing with it, I know I was kind of getting some things wrong, and I'd start off just building this API where I would hit a scan endpoint to scan for devices, and then because that's going to return me a result straight away, I want it to return results over time. The easiest way was to then, have it store the devices it finds, the peripherals that referred to as, store those peripherals in memory, and then for me to hit another endpoint to get the list of peripherals. Great. So then I grab the ID of one of those peripherals and then say connects to it, and then I have to hit another endpoint to then get the data back from there and see what capabilities it has and so on. And I didn't actually get that far. I started to run into some problems, but it kind of felt like it was enough to make a start on the stream. So I forget the point I was making actually, but so it's easy to test a lot of those things when you don't have to keep going to one endpoint, grabbing the ID and then copying it into another endpoint that you want to hit. It's a lot easier if I just build something that's going to continuously. Probably I'll start off with just polling the endpoint to find that for when new devices appear, or I might just stick a refresh button in there. But yeah, it kind of feels like, although it might be slightly extra work, a slight extra bit of work, it should hopefully pay off. And it'll also be just nice to put some front end on it. A lot of these kind of things, I tend to find that you may not plan on having a front end to begin with, but it ends up being quite valuable. So, where are we at? Because so I've got some warnings. Because you select an Angular specific preset, we generate an NX workspace. Okay, good. All right, okay, fair enough. So NX is going to use Angular workspaces, which is handy. Telling me that CLI is not installed globally. And recommending the NX tutorial. So it's practically my first time using NX, but I'm going to skip the tutorial for now because I'm just one of those people. I'd rather skip the tutorial and then complain loudly that it doesn't work the way I expect it to. So I've now got a workspace. I'm going to open that up in Visual Studio Code. So code bulb, and let's full screen that. So yeah, here's my workspace. It's already got all the node modules installed. That's probably what took most of the time. And I've got the libraries, apps. So I've got the API library here. I've got the bulb library, and end-to-end test runner. That's one of the nice things about this as well. Having the front and back end written in not only the same workspace and the same repo, but in the same language. Just means things like end-to-end tests should hopefully be easier to write. I'm not going to write any end-to-end tests just yet. I need to probably learn a little bit about Cypress first. I've heard very good things about it, but not used it. But it also allows you to share interfaces and so on between the two. So that's a really great feature that I'm looking forward to, because the number of times where I've had an API that has a data transfer object that then I have to recreate on the front end. You can write some tooling around that to generate. I had a C# project a few years back where we had it generating TypeScript interfaces for the front end, but we had to set a lot of that up manually. This way you can just use the same interfaces because we're using the same language front and back. And I don't think there's any other language really that can claim that. Obviously TypeScript and JavaScript can, but given that there are no real other choices on the front end, it's kind of a fairly unique benefit that you get from this particular ecosystem. So just to test that it's working, probably want to get this up and running. Bless you, wife, bless you. She's mouthing sorry to me, but for anyone who saw the tweet of the pizza that I had, she doesn't really need to be sorry. I had a beautiful homemade pizza. So let's start with in here we'll split this horizontally. No, vertically I mean. Okay, cool. So we're gonna have I think the API on one side and the front end on the other. What am I doing? CD bulb. So if I remember rightly, let's actually let's follow the tutorial a little bit further. So we created our front end application. I think I just need to use the ng-serve. So I don't have any special NX specific commands for that. So ng-serve API. So that's going to serve up the API project, and then ng-serve was it front end or UI, or I can't remember what it was now. In this particular case, I think then are they using. So that was the difference actually. I think this tutorial must have been written a while ago, because when they created the NX workspace, they didn't get all those options that I got, the presets, and had to manually add a front end and back end. So the version that I've got, and let me close this because I'm not actually using that. The version that I have has API and bulb is the name of my front end. So let's ng-serve bulb. Oh, it's not serve, it's presumably it's ng start bulb. I mean, I know we're going to have a package.json in here, right? There's going to be a, I say that, no there's not. Interesting. There's no separate package.json there. So we've got one in the root. So we've got start for ng-serve. Ng is, so that's interesting, having an ng script, so npm run ng. That's okay. So what else have we got in here? Affected format, help, dependency graph. Okay, so let's go with start, but then if that doesn't ng serve, let's see what happens. I mean, it could equally be. I'm trying to remember the command line for it now, actually. So this is where I start to expose my ignorance. So Angular command line start. Angular CLI ng new ng serve. It is just literally ng serve. So do I just need to do that then? Ng serve. It requires to be running an Angular project, but a project definition could not be found. Oh, this is just me being an idiot then, because I'm in the wrong folder. I opened up, I split it right, and it didn't go into the bulb folder. Thought that was odd. So ng serve bulb. Hopefully that should just work as I expected it to the first time. If this wasn't live, I'd be like cutting that section of the video, but as it is, I'll leave it in there just to show what happens when you're an idiot. So that's compiled successfully. This one's compiled successfully. Right, so let's go to what I ported on 4200. So if we go to localhost 4200, I should have a beautiful front end, and this looks like that's the API backend, which is on port 3333. Nice and easy. Okay, let's open up port 3333, localhost 3333. Whoops, I need to get presumably something from the back end, so let's just check what endpoints I've got. Apologies to anyone who's watching just me swipe between screens. I love doing that. It's my favorite thing about having a MacBook. So let's go to API, source, app. Let's have a look at, I guess, app.module. Nope, app.controller. Okay, good. So we've got a hello endpoint. Let's just say hello to our API. And that didn't work. Brilliant. Oh, it's presumably got to be API/hello, which would be defined somewhere. Not sure exactly where. Let's try it, and we'll just assume that it's magic if it does work. API/hello. It works. Brilliant. So all my API requests have to be prefixed with API. That makes sense. So I'm not going to spend too long delving into how that's done. So I'm kind of thinking to do all this TDD. Now I haven't written any tests in Nest, but I've written plenty of tests in Angular. Obviously not for this project. You literally just saw me create it. But I'm hoping that the testing experience in Nest is similar. It's built on the same dependency injection kind of module system that Angular is built on, or the same kind of system at least. So yeah, let's have a look at the Nest. Let's have a look at the official Nest documentation on this one. So NestJS. Okay, documentation. So now this is where you get to see how I read documentation, which is that I don't really read it at all. What I usually do is scroll down the page faster than I can possibly read all the documentation and look for something that's just going to jump out at me. I've just become desensitized to text, apparently. Fundamentals, testing, that's what I wanted. Okay, so to get started, first install the required package. So hold on, okay, so it's use Jest. That's interesting. Oh, so the back end, I guess, uses Jest. That's fine because Jest is similar enough to the front end that it shouldn't be a problem. Let's have a look. We have got some specs here. Oh, good. So they look pretty similar. So we have test.create testing module. Okay, cool. So that's similar to the test bed. In fact, so this will be the first application I've written using Angular 9. So this is going to be fun. I know there were some changes with Angular 9. Let's have a very quick look at some tests. I'm going to keep that one open so we can do a comparison. Now, if I'm lucky, I'll get somebody on the stream who knows Angular better than I do, and they can point out what I do wrong. So there we go, testbed.configure testing module. That doesn't look like it's changed a lot. For some reason I thought that was slightly different, but it looks, unless I'm not using Angular 9, which is entirely possible as well. Let's take a quick look at my package.json. So we've got Angular, no, it's Angular 9, so that's good news. So it looks like they're fairly similar. We have our providers array, and then we just do, so that's just called app instead of having a static test bed. But otherwise, it looks pretty similar. The dog doesn't like my constant stream of consciousness, so she's gone elsewhere. So let's start by writing a test then. So I'm going to create, well actually let me just quickly walk through some of the dependencies we're going to be using. So given that I need to communicate with the bulb via Bluetooth, I need some sort of Bluetooth library to do that. Now the one that I looked at was called Noble. So the only problem being that Noble seems to have not been maintained for quite some time. If you happen to be the author of Noble and are watching this stream, first off, I've got much wider reach than I thought I was going to get. But secondly, please maintain your app. We, as in everyone that likes open source, without contributing as much as we probably ought to, would be very grateful. However, the beauty of open source is that somebody else picked it up and ran with it. So thank you very much to the original author, but also thank you to Abandonware, which is a very fitting name. I don't know whether this is someone who just goes around like picking up other people's unmaintained projects, but this is being actively maintained. You can see their last update was 9 hours ago, so very, very active. So I'm going to use the Abandonware version of Noble, and hopefully that should keep me going. So I'm going to leave this open actually because I'm going to need some of this documentation. So yeah, so we use Noble. I can't think of other ones off the top of my head. I think a lot of the dependencies that I would normally need, things like TypeScript, they're already set up thanks to Narwhal and their NX tools. So let's just go back to here. Now I don't really want to install it in either of these folders. Let's just create a new tab for this, and remember to cd into bulb. Make sure I'm in the right folder. So I've got my package.json in here. Yes, I do. So npm. I should probably make this text a little bigger because I can see it's going to be a little bit small on the screen. So npm install dev. Oh no, it's not dev. It's a regular dependency. So save at abandonware /noble. Okay. So that should install pretty quick. So first endpoint that I'm going to want is something to start scanning, and then I'll want something to stop scanning. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this all TDD, which means I'm definitely not going to get something working tonight. But yeah, but I mean, if I do choose to continue with this project, hopefully I'll get something working eventually, and it won't be one of those things where I regret not doing it right from the start. So there we go, everything's installed. Let's get back over to here, and my phone's going. I'm popular. Greetings to Mr. Gillard, who's just notified me via WhatsApp. He's on. So let's go with our first test. So we've got a test in app service. Now I noticed that app service, it seems to be like a level of abstraction beyond app module. So no, sorry, not app module, app controller. So we've got these controllers that are created. I need to probably read up on some of the documentation, but I'm not sure how it knows which one's the kind of bootstrap controller. I guess maybe it doesn't really matter as long as you don't duplicate any of the paths. I think you can even specify like a base path for a controller here. Let's see. Do we? No. Okay. I'll maybe look that up later. But for now, I'm only going to use the app controller. So what I'm going to do is I need to get the tests running. Actually, make sure the tests work before I do anything else. So let's split these vertically. Oh, not vertically. Horizontally is what I mean. Being an idiot. So I'm going to keep the actual servers running at the top, but then I'm going to set the tests running. So let's do ng. I think you can just do ng test and then the name of the project. So this is the API on this side, and now I don't know. Does that run in? Oh, it looks like it. It's because it's using jest. That should be in watch mode by default. No, it's not. Okay, ng test API -- watch. It's amazing how much you can get away with not reading the documentations because everyone uses the same kind of conventions. So let's see. So we've got all tests. Oh, so yeah, jest has this kind of nifty command line menu for rerunning your tests. So we've got 2 tests that are running and passing. It's a little bit noisy on the output. What we got there? Depreciation warning, deep requiring like const blah blah blah, blah is depreciated as of UID 7.x. Please require the top level module when using Node.js CommonJS module. So does that tell me where that's coming from? Doesn't, but let's have a quick look at those tests, just see if, because given that we're just starting out, I'd kind of like to avoid any overly noisy tests if I can. So if we look at app.service.spec, have we got anything that's doing requires? Let's just reorder these a little bit. I want my editor to be bang smack in the middle with my terminal on one side and my browser on the other. So app.service.spec, it's something to do with a requiring UUID. But it's probably a nested dependency, so it might just be something I've got to put up with for now. I don't want to get too much into it on the stream. Maybe I'll look into it later. So we've got an app.service and we've got an app.controller. I'm going to start off with the app controller actually. So should return welcome to API. Let's so that's, it says get data. Oh, that's because is it called get data? Let's have a quick look. Yeah, it is called get data. Get data is pretty much what I was going to call it. Well, actually no, I'm going to change it. So let's change the name in the test first. So again, doing this TDD, I should be always changing my test before I change. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm only allowed to write implementation code if there's a test failing, and if there are no tests failing, my next goal is to either refactor or write a test. So I'm not going to do a refactor yet. I'm going to start by writing tests. So let's change this to start scan, and it should. And now let me just have a very quick look at the API for Noble. I believe there's a fairly simple start scanning thing. Yeah, noble.start scanning. So it should start scanning for peripherals. Okay, so that's getting a new app controller. Now I'll probably move that to the before. That's because we've got before all. Okay, so that's interesting. So I'd normally I would do that in a before each. I don't know if there's a reason for doing it in the before all as opposed to before each. I'll leave it there for now, and I'm going to create a before each. And before each test, I want to instantiate my my unit under test. So I tend to call my unit, You may disagree with that. The reason I do that is because it then makes it very clear which is the unit under test. Some people do SUT to stand for subject under test, but I like to do that. Now that got me into a little bit of confusion with an app that I was working on recently, where unit was the name of a model, so I ended up having to not use that convention. So let's move that up to on the for each. Let's not do const app controller. We'll just change that to unit equals app.get app controller. Okay. Great, and then expect unit dot start scan to. So do I actually want that to return anything? Probably not at the moment. So let's just get rid of that. So I need to provide the noble dependency. So that's so. With the tradition of using dependency injection as per the way Angular does it, that's going to be injected into my controller. So, so if you look at this, where we've got like noble.start scanning and stop scanning, that's just a direct reference to the noble namespace or object or whatever that's required here. So obviously we're not requiring it, we're going to be importing it, but that I expect that to get injected rather than to be imported in my controller. So I'm going to start with, if I look at, just have a very quick look at let's close the service because that's not the one I'm looking at, and the component on the front end. So app.control.ts, yeah, so I'm just going to add it into the constructor. In fact, what have I got there? So I do have the app service. Should I be putting it into the app service and have it control the scanning? Maybe, although I tend to use the service for communicating externally, so I'm not gonna add that level of abstraction yet. It feels like that'd be a bit overcomplicating it, to say the least. So to start with, I'm going to create a mock noble. So let mock noble. I always precede my mocks with the word mock because that's just how I prefer to do it. Start scanning is going to be a new spy. So I forget now. This is jest on the back end. So is it it's lowercase jest dot create spy? I'm now remembering. Spy on. It's not really spy on, is it? I suppose I could spy on noble. Now here's why I don't like using spy on. I prefer to add my mock as a standalone spy rather than providing the original noble library and then spying on that. And the reason being is that it'll become very clear when I've forgotten to provide a mock method, because here I don't want to actually start scanning. I don't want to call the noble.start scanning method. I just want to test that if I provided noble, that I called the start scanning method when this endpoint was called. So what I need to do is just look up with jest how I create a spy, and this is probably where I'm going to now fall over completely. I'll create spy, I'll create mock. Let's have a look at create mock, because this is ringing a bell. It might just be jest.fn. Yeah, there we go. So, so that I remember that confusing me last time I was using jest. Actually, that I was using the wrong terminology essentially. So I can just do jest.fn. I actually kind of like that because it's 2 less characters to type. No, 1 less character to type than just jest.spy. So I create a new function, and then mock noble. I need to add that to my providers. So this will so obviously that's not how I provide it. I need to so if I was providing the real one, I would just do noble and I would import that from the top, and that's not going to work either because I presumably need to install the types for that. So let me just switch over to my other window here. You know what, would I be better off? No, I'll do it here. Yeah, so npm install. Now this is a dev dependency, and it's going to be at types slash, I want to say noble. Let's see if this works. Meanwhile, who have I got on the stream? Have I got 4 people on the stream? If you're in the stream, say hi. But don't just say hi out loud, but like, you know, say hi in chat, I guess. I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm using Restream. Ah, there you go. Bionic alligator. Nice. My son's got a thing for alligators, and he'd probably love a robotic one. Yeah, I'm using Restream, so I'm currently streaming to Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and Mixer, because I can't decide between all of them. So I asked people who are much more knowledgeable than me, and they couldn't give me a clear answer. So yeah, so I've got my types in there now. Hopefully, if I just add noble. Oh, noble. Nope, it might not have picked them up yet. Let's just actually try manually importing it. So import noble from noble. Abandonware noble, yeah. Okay, so it's going to be star as noble, I think. So I'm not going to go into the differences between default exports and actual exports, etc. But actual exports, I call them actual exports. I mean default exports and named exports. But I could talk at length on that topic. Anyone who knows me knows that applies to any topic. So now if I provide noble there, it can be passed in as a provider. Well, apparently it can't actually, because it's missing the following properties. Oh, that's interesting. So the way that the providers work is slightly different here. That's fine, because that's not how I intended to do the provider. I'm hoping this works the same as in Angular. This is where I find out that it doesn't. Provide, and then noble. So this is what is the original dependency that I want to provide, and then I want to do use value mock noble. And does that work? It does not. What's that not like? So types of property provide are incompatible. Is not assignable. Type of import that is not assignable to type string, symbol, function, type, or abstract. Ah man, I'm going to fall over at the first hurdle, because it is in fact unable to provide that. Let's see. Let's Google that error. This is where the stream is now just going to turn into me Googling errors. Type. Let's Google that one. Or is not assignable to type value provider any. That's probably the better one. Oh, in fact, it's probably. Yeah, let's go with that one. Okay. So let's Google it down here. NestJS good. TS error on adding provider to a module. Now and again, this is how I read GitHub and Stack Overflow. Same way I read documentation. I just scroll down, look for things that jump out, and it's usually these that jump out at me. All the upvotes. In my case, I want to provide a private constructor. Is it because noble isn't a let's have a look. If we control click on that, so what's it look like when we export? So we export things like peripheral and descriptor and characteristic and so on. Maybe I just need to export the function rather than the whole object. That would kind of make sense. Let's try start scanning then. That's going to be real annoying then if I have to provide them all separately, but we'll try it, just see if it works. So if I was to say import start scanning, and then say I'm going to keep that in mock noble like that, but if I said here start scanning mock noble dot start scanning, right, that looks like maybe what I've got to do. That's quite interesting actually. So you can't mock the default export. I wonder if it's because it's a default export or some other reason. It never really comes up in Angular because I'm so used to using everything that uses named exports. and maybe that's just going to be another reason to add to the list of reasons I don't like default exports. Okay, so that's never reassigned, that's true, so let's do that. So for start scanning, that makes it fairly easy anyway, so it should start scanning for peripherals. So all I want to do is expect mock noble.start scanning dot to have been called, and that's it. So if I go to my tests, hopefully they are now failing. One failed. Let's just check. Can't find module native binding from bindings.js. That wasn't the failure I was expecting to see. Okay, you might want to include file extension in your import. Just was able to find Mac bindings.js. You might want to include a file extension in your import. Where's it complaining about that from? From just resolve build index. From libmac bindings. It's noble again that it doesn't like. It's something about it's probably where I've imported noble and then something else is going wrong. That's quite interesting though. So I'm just gonna again Google that, because who knows, maybe someone's already come up with a solution to that. Bindings, that's not really quite what I want. Cannot find module. Oh, because there's noble issues one. Here we go. Fingers crossed for lots of upvotes on one particular reply. Oh, well, this is the one with the most upvotes. It's just got the one. We need more details. Damn it. So, Bluetooth HCI socket filter compile. Make sure it has all the dependencies. In addition to blues, you usually need libudev Python 2.7 to make GTC. Interesting. Okay, so it's one of those NPM packages that's relying on Python to compile something specific to this OS, which is going to be real fun. Let me see what I can do about that. Is there anything that I can do? Is the question. So I'm not getting any other warnings before that. What could I do? Let's have a look and see what else we got here. Node Canvas has got a similar issue, but it's specifically the one with Noble, I think, that I'm gonna want to look for. Let's just actually try narrowing that down to Noble. Yeah, it's probably just a duplicate one, so it's not really going to have any more upvotes, I would imagine. Managed to make it go away, but deleting the node modules folder and repeating npm install. I mean, that does fix most npm bugs, right? Installed node LTS version 8.11. Resolved it for me. I mean, this is from just over a year ago, and to be fair, the other one with upvotes is from back in 2016. I mean, hell, I'll try it. Why not? Even though it's a pretty fresh install, is that going to do it? Any opinions from Bionic Alligator? What do you think I should do? Delete node modules and package lock and reinstall. It's a quote from Aliens always crops up at this point, which is take off nuclear site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. I'm going to go with, well, with nothing else to do at this point, I'm going to try that. So let's quit that. I'm going to have to quit the front end as well, because I'm going to be deleting the node modules that's shared on both. Yeah, you and me both, Mr. Alligator. So let's go to node modules and delete the whole folder, move to trash, and then package lock will delete. Now the other thing I could potentially look at doing is seeing if there are any of the dependencies that are outdated. However, I suspect that they're not. The fact that we're already using Angular 9 in here leads me to believe that we're probably quite up to date. We've just installed abandonware / noble, and that's going to be the latest version. So yeah, let's see if that. Wow, so node modules is deleted already. I'm so used to due to network issues at work that's taking a lot longer. I don't know. Maybe it's because I shouldn't be deleting my node modules folder so often, but right. So npm install. Yeah, let's see what happens. So this might take a minute to fetch everything. In the meantime, let me take a quick look at that test again. So all I'm expecting here is for the start scanning method to be called on whenever I call the start scan endpoint. Now it'd be nice if I could also test this, but at the same time, I'm not sure. I'm kind of in two minds about whether I should test the endpoint, given that I may want to change the endpoint and not want to have to go and update my tests. But when I think about it from, like, say, a front-end perspective, I'll quite often recommend testing DOM events that trigger behaviors rather than testing the functions that are triggered by the DOM event. So to give an example, if I've got a button click that triggers the save of a record and then goes and hits an API, I won't call component.save in my test. I'll trigger the click on the button because that's how the user is going to interact with it, so that gives you a much truer representation of the test. Otherwise, you could have a test that passes, but you never actually wire up the event handler to the DOM event. So I kind of feel the same about this one. I feel like the interface that the user has, the user in this case being the consumer of the API, the interface is that endpoint. So I feel like I should be able to test that. Now there probably is a way to test it. I'm not aware of it at the moment, and I don't want to spend too long getting into it. So that's all reinstalled. Let's try running the tests again. Before I spin anything else up, we'll see if that made any difference. I don't think this is going to make a difference, and it didn't. So what was it actually saying? Cannot find module native / binding from bindings.js. However, Jest was able to find native / binding.node. You might want to include a file extension in your import, or update your module file extensions, which is currently TypeScript, JS, HTML. So that's quite useful. I probably should have read that first. So let's have a look at where I update this. If this is a config in my root, in my project root, that might just do. In fact, look, there we go. See, Jest. Ah, good. So it's a Jest config thing. Okay, thank you, Jest. Let's have a quick look at that page and see if I can update it to include that binding. Jest's configuration can be defined in the package.json part of your project. Yeah, okay, let's see where it's currently defined actually. So Jest's config, we've got a separate Jest config, okay. So actually that might just be all I've got to do is if I take module file extensions, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Let's add node to that. Save that. And then can I rerun them all now, or do I have to restart the tests? Let's try restarting, because usually if you change the config, you would expect to have to restart that. Okay, that's different anyway. Depreciation warning. Depreciation or deprecation? It looks kind of like deprecation. There's no I before the A. It's deprecation warning. That's come up in red, but I think that's just the console getting confused. And then, yeah, I've actually got a genuine failure. So it was that easy. Expected jest.function to have been called. I'm wondering, can I name that jest function? I prefer that the output is a little bit more readable. So let's give that a, oh, hello. Oh, I think I need to maybe reload the IDE, because after deleting the node modules folder, it probably lost all the types temporarily. That looks better. Okay, so let's give this a name. We'll call it start scanning. No, I can't do that. That's a pain. So I can add a function with any number of args. That's presumably to give it like a mock version of the function, but still be able to spy on it. Okay, I'll make do with that then. There's probably a way to provide a more readable name, but for now I'll just leave it as is. My test should be small enough that it should be obvious which one isn't running, and plus I can kind of see here which one's failing. So so that hasn't been called. That means I'm now allowed to finally write my first piece of implementation code. So I'm going to change that to start scan, even though I don't have a test associated with it yet, which means strictly speaking I'm breaking TDD, but so what. So now I need to provide my noble start scan function. Now this is where it's going to get really annoying that we don't have a noble class. Now I could maybe get around that. I'm going to start off with what we currently have. It may not be that big an issue, but if I want to add start scan or start scanning as a function and pass it in here, the type that I pass in there is going to be a type start scanning. That's not really right, is it? If I do import from abandonware noble, so that's start scanning. If I was to put that in as type start scanning, let's just call it scan. Type start scanning, yeah, because it's a function, so I can't really use it as a type. Okay, so can't. Bless you. I could do that import star as noble, but I can't use that as a type either, presumably, because I can't use namespace noble as a type. Fine. So the easiest way probably for me to do this, that I can think of off the top of my head, is to create a class, even if it's just static, that essentially bundles up all of the pieces of noble and puts them onto something that I can then contain as a single type that then I can use that in my dependency injection. There may be a better way to do that. I could use a token, an injection token as well, which is essentially just a string representation of anything. I can't remember the last time I used an injection token though. Let's have a quick look at how I do that. So I'm going to assume that they do exist in Nest. So Nest injection token, custom providers, injectable. Let's go with custom providers. So search for token. Okay. Token cat service. That's not quite what I want. Can I have like a string token is what I'm wondering. Oh, there we go. Non-class based provider token. So provide connection. So when that's actually used, there we go. At inject connection. Nice and simple. So let's do that then. So I'm going to go back to my test then and just change this back to being mock noble. But I'm going to change the type here to being noble. Now I'm putting it in caps just because I saw these guys putting it in caps. I'm not sure if that's really what I need to do, but let's go with caps. I could also, might be advisable to extract that into some const somewhere. I'm just going to leave it as a string for now. And then what I do here is at inject, and then the same token, so it was noble, and call it noble, which is of type. Oh, so I don't have the a type there. They do have type connection. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to just call it any then, aren't I? Which is not quite what I wanted. Oh, but that's also shadowing this up here. I'll do that. Can I do type noble? I can't. I can't use namespace noble as a type. let's see if I can just get away without putting a type on it. Add inject to existing input declaration from NestJS common, that's fine. Now what I'm also wondering, actually, I had this same problem earlier, is I'd like a way to extract an interface from a type. So the easiest way I found from a type, so extract an interface from a usage. Now the easiest way I found to do this was actually to use Visual Studio Code's tooltips. So if I create var x equals foo : bar, if let's say that was like a much more complex type, and I'll put a constant there as well. If that's a much more complex type, and I wanted to create an interface from that, I can just hover over here and it gives me the interface. That works great for short interfaces, but it doesn't work so well if you've got 100 properties on there, because it shows you like the first 10, and then it says 19 more or 89 more, and then it shows you the last one. So it saves you a little bit of time, but not a lot. That said, however, there are some shortcuts that I can take. There's probably a better way to do what I want to do than what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna control click into here, and this is gonna be fun. So if I grab basically everything that says export declare in it, and crikey, there's a lot of stuff there. I'm gonna just grab everything to begin with, and I'm gonna create a type in. Let's put it in app, new folder. We'll call it types. It's a terrible name for it, but then I'll call it noble.ts. So if I just whack all that in there, now all I've done is grab the type declaration, which isn't really what I want. But if I now do export declare and press Control D a whole bunch of times, I'm going to stop here because these ones are all single line and easy to do. I'm gonna, whoops, I want to do export declare. Let's do all the function ones actually to begin with, because again they're nice and easy. Start proving out the concept. Oh man, I'm not sure how well these are going to work. Okay. So yeah, if I get rid of all of those and go to the end of the line, oh no, I want to keep that in actually. Let's do export interface noble, and oops, not put it there, but put that here. Okay, save that. Oh god, didn't want to do that. It's I don't want it. I want to save it without formatting for now. Save without formatting. Control KS. Must remember that. Okay. Events.event emitter. Oh, I probably needed that events in there. Let's just reopen Noble. Control Shift T if you're not already familiar with that shortcut. It's amazing. So let's just grab events again from here. So I've got my events is require events. Can I auto change that? No. Import start as events from events. Okay. What is it not like here? This overload and the one on 911 can be combined into one signature. Okay, well, I mean that's fine. Wait, hold on. Scan start or scan stop. Oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So, because they've got the same. I'm gonna leave them separate just for now, even though it makes perfect sense what it's saying. I kind of like the overloads as well, like that. It's a nice use of TypeScript. So let's add remove all event listeners here. So then we're going to add state, which is a string. Okay. Then we've got peripheral, which is a class. So that's going to I'm going to leave that one then because I don't need that. And actually, the rest of it, I think the rest are all classes that yeah, all those that can already be injection tokens. So it's literally just all those functions that we're getting passed about. I did it again. So command KS, there we go, save without formatting. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to import peripheral from Noble, and that's it. Let's add that type here. I kind of like that type intersection. Scan stop, and then get rid of. Oh no, not that. And then do the same up here, or scan stop. Okay, cool. So save, and again I keep doing that same thing. Control KS. Okay, so state string. What's it not like about that? Declaration of instance field not allowed after declaration of instance method. Oh, okay, fair enough. Let's move that up to the top. Make that go away. Okay, so now we've got an interface that I can hopefully inject. That might need to be a class, an abstract class. Let's try it as an interface. I can't remember. You should be able to inject an interface. That's the whole point of them. So let's try that here. So Noble, sorry, it's not even the injection that's the problem. It's just I want to be able to strongly type it. So can't use namespace Noble as a type. That's because I don't want to do that anymore. I want to import Noble from types Noble. That's better. So I don't actually need to import the original Noble namespace because it's being that's imported elsewhere and set up with the dependency injection. Now I haven't actually added it to app modules, so even if I get my test working, my app won't work yet because I haven't got any tests for app module. But we'll get to that later. So get data. Now I don't plan on this actually returning anything. All I want it to do is to call Noble. This is going to be this.noble. In fact, I need to make that private. So private Noble, which means now I can do this.noble. Yeah, that's better. Start scanning. Bish bash bosh. So let's call that something else as well. Start scanning. Oh, I just realized my test is BS because I haven't actually called start scanning. I haven't called the endpoint start scanning. So let's try doing that now. Just checking. Oh, good. Okay, so I prefer with these nested describe blocks, given that they give you the ability to kind of reduce the amount of code that you're rewriting. Reduce the amount of code that you're rewriting, but at the moment it's going to increase the amount of code that I'm writing full stop. I'm going to put in unit.startScanning because that's inside of this start scan describe block. It means that before each test inside of this describe block that will be run. So I always try to make sure that that matches what's in the describe block. In fact, to make that a bit better, when the start scan, I'm going to call it start scan, so let's rename that to start scan so it matches. The start scan endpoint is called unit.startScan. It should start scanning for peripherals. Notice I didn't in my test say it should call the start scanning method on bulb, even though that's what's actually happened. Not on bulb, sorry, on Noble, even though that's what's actually happening. Start scan does not exist. That might be because I was out of sync briefly. Let's rerun all tests. 1 passed, 2 passed. Good. Okay, so so I'm however long into the stream now, and I've got my first passing test that I actually wrote. So it's been slow going, but we're getting somewhere. What time are we at? 12 minutes past 9. I'll keep going for a little bit longer. I kind of want to get something going. So that's going to start scanning, but it's that doesn't really help us a great deal at the moment because I haven't got a list of devices. So maybe what I'd like to do is by the end of tonight get to a point where I've got a list of devices that I can pull back out of an endpoint. So you can filter your scan results. I'm not going to do that. I just want to scan for everything. So noble.start scanning, and then you can provide a callback as well. Now, if I could remember how it gets these results. So in order for me to get a peripheral, I think what I need to do is add a Noble hat. Noble's kind of seems to have a bit of an identity crisis in terms of how it handles this kind of thing. So you've got event handlers that you can set up with like a noble.on, I think it is, noble.on state change. Oh, so let's just add this one in that controller. Whoops. So this just allows us to see whether or not the Noble library has essentially been loaded. It's got like a powered on and powered off state, which is for whatever your Bluetooth controller is. So I'm just going to add that in here. I'm not going to write a test for it. I'm kind of breaking my own. Oops, I don't want to do it there. I want to do it maybe in the constructor. And then that callback, I'm just going to literally have it echo out the state. Console.log the state. States. So that I should be able to see then when I actually run it. If I don't know whether it'll be when I hit that endpoint for the first time or whether it just instantiates the controller to begin with, but I should see the powered on or powered off state appear. So let's try that out now. Oh, I've suddenly got broken tests. Expected jest.function to have been called. Is that let's just rerun all the tests just to make sure. Yep, it sure doesn't like that. Okay. Is that because I've just added noble.on state change? Let's just comment that out and just go back and just check what changed. Yeah, that looks like it doesn't like me adding that. Oh, because so I literally said this earlier in the stream. One of the reasons why I prefer to provide my own mocks rather than spying on an existing implementation is that it makes it very clear when I haven't provided a mock implementation. It forces me to provide all of the mocks up front. Now the confusing thing here is that the output, it should be telling me that on isn't a function, because if we look back at the spec, my mock here doesn't have an on function. Now if I look here, I don't think it tells me that at any point. It just tells me that it expected start scanning to have been called. Just scroll up here and see if we've got a stack trace there. Okay, so it does, but it's kind of nestled away here at the top, and the confusing thing here is I've got a lot of output there for two tests. So we've got when the start scan endpoint is called, should start scanning for peripherals. When the start scan endpoint is called, should start scanning for peripherals. Okay, that's interesting. So we had it's reporting every error for the for that endpoint rather than so I've got four errors being shown for that one test rather than showing me the first error and then stopping. I can see where that's useful, but I think I actually prefer to just see the first error because I end up with quite a noisy output there, but it's at least I know what to look for now. So easy enough to fix anyway. I can just add on and then put a jest.function here, and and then not actually do anything else with it. Now that's not necessarily something I'd recommend for most things. Now I don't actually need that state change there. I'm just putting that in so that I can see that powered on or powered off is the state. If I decide that is critical functionality, then I should add a test around that. It's really down to you as a developer, how much risk you're willing to take versus how much time you want to spend writing your tests. I would normally recommend testing that though, because that's the danger here is that by just providing an empty function, a spy, my test is now going to pass, but it doesn't really check that functionality is correct. So if I didn't have an assertion here, that is essentially like an assertionless test almost. It's not really providing value here. But anyway, I'll leave it where it is for now. So I want to actually start the API up. I'm going to ignore the UI tonight, so I'm just going to close that and hopefully. Oh, so I mentioned this one again earlier as well. I haven't set up Noble as a provider in my app.module. So in my test, I said, see here, oh, not that one. This one, you can see I said when you're provided a value Noble to use mock Noble. Now, presumably, if I just copy that and change it to use the real Noble, if we change that to Noble, I'll put it in lowercase because I don't want it to get confused with the interface that I created. Import star as Noble from abandonware, just not for Noble, abandonware Noble. So that should do it because that's the same token. If I refresh there, good, and you can see here our state is powered on, so that's a good start. So I can now hit the start scanning endpoint and it'll tell me that it started scanning. I'm going to just add a console.log into there. Now straight away I can foresee me wanting to put some abstraction for console.log. I don't really want to have console.log all over my app. There's a number of reasons why I might not want that. First off, if I wanted to change the behavior of all of my logging so that I can filter out log messages based on the severity, or I could prefix all of my log messages with something, I'd like to be able to control that in one place. Secondly, then just becomes a lot easier to then mock the log as well, rather than having to keep overriding console.log. I could just provide a jest function to it. So yeah, that should just let me know when that gets called. I'm not going to call it just yet. What I want to implement now is an endpoint to show well, I probably want a stop scanning endpoint, so that should be nice and easy. If I just copy that entire test, paste it, and then change every instance of start scanning to stop scanning. Now should stop scanning for peripherals. Let's add this endpoint to so stop scanning should be added to the mock, which is up here. In fact, if I just copy that line and change that to stop, I'm so glad that I added the interface for added the token for Noble, because that's a lot easier than having to provide a new provider every time I add a new property to it. So then in the controller, I can just copy and paste that as well, and just highlight start and just Control D 3 times and type stop, save, and now I should have now 3 tests passing. 2, 3 passed. Good. Okay. So that one was nice and easy. Now we're going to add an endpoint to return me a list of peripherals, I hope. So I need to let's start by just writing a test for the endpoint that doesn't exist yet. So again, in the spirit of TDD, we'll start with a describe block when the peripherals endpoint is called, and then I want to add a before each to that. So before each, and then it should do something. Okay, so this will fail to begin with in the before each, although knowing jest, it's then going to be kind of hard to tell, but that's why. So if I go with unit dot, in fact, it'll not even fail the before each, it won't compile full stop because I'm about to add an endpoint that doesn't exist. So unit dot, we'll call it get peripherals. So unit.get peripherals, that's not going to exist, so let's just add that now. Declare method, go on to there. I wish it would add it at the bottom. I wonder if I can configure that. And we'll add a decorator to that as well, so we'll call it peripherals, and we'll throw the error there. So what should it do? It should actually, so this isn't the next test I want to write. What I want to write is that as a test to say that I've set up a handler for the start scanning. So let's have a quick look at the documentation on that. It's somewhere on the oh, I started looking at it before, didn't I? I was looking for noble.on, and then so we've got state change, scan start. So we've got a scan start callback, but it's a discover. That's the device. That's the one I want. So here, this is going to be a fun part. I need to check that when the component is instantiated, it sets up a handler for that, and then I want to actually test the handler as well. So okay, I can do that, I think. Let's grab that. So now this is probably where I ought to be using the service to do this. So we'll go with that approach. Let's go to the controllers spec file. I'm going to comment this out for now because I'm not actually going to I'm not going to do that one yet. What I want to do is start testing the when it's instantiated. So I'll put it at the top. It seems logical that it will go there. When the controller is instantiated, and in fact, I don't think I even need to do that, right? I can just put it straight in the it block because I've already got it's already being instantiated here. So it should set up the correct event handlers. Let's try that. Okay, so this should be quite an easy test, but then getting the next stage will be a little bit more involved. So expect mocknoble.on.to have been called. Now at the moment it's going to pass because I've already got something setting up a state change handler. So I mean I could put a test in for that if I could remember how to do jest.any, because I don't actually care about that one. Let's ignore that though. So I'm going to change it to being called with. Now the event that I want to listen to is discover, and then I want to what I'm going to do is have a method on the service which I'll mock for the purposes of this test and pass that in. So let's create my mock service now. So const mock service equals and then in fact, I shouldn't. So I've kind of broken one of my own rules here. I don't like normally to do any assignments outside of the describe block, just because as a rule, it's safer to do it inside of the describe block, albeit slightly less performant. It's safer mainly because when you run a new test, you know you're getting a fresh set of spies. Now that can vary depending on if you're using Jasmine or Jest or Mocha. In that, not Mocha specifically, like Chai spies or Sinon, that they all handle resetting your spies differently. But I tend to just set them up new each time so that I don't ever have to worry about resetting the spies. I know it's a brand new one. So I'll do the same thing with this service. It does mean slightly more code because I am having to kind of do all my declarations up here and do all my assignments down here, but it's not prohibitively too much code. So mock service equals, and then what was the method I want to call? Discover. So I'll call it on discover. I might want a better name later, but I'll just call it that for now. And save that. And what I want it to be called with is mock service dot on discover. To finish the test, there's still one other thing I need to add. I think, well, first off, I want to change that line length because I'm not happy with the line width there. In fact, this might be under. We've got an editor config. Yes, we do, and the print width. I think it's print width. Is it print width? About 140 characters, I think, is what I usually go for. Can I save that and it reformat? No, of course I can't. Is it in Prettier? No, it's not in Prettier. Oh, that's Prettier ignore, that's why. Prettier RC, single quote. I got a not end of line. Is it print width in here? Print width. Oh god, 80 is the default, so that's far too short. Save that. Ah, it's better. Okay. So I've saved it in both. So I've got my on discover. Oh yeah, I need to add it into my providers as well. So let's just add a new one there. Provide. So the service is app service. So this one I don't need to give it as a string token because it's a class and it can tokenize itself, I guess. And we'll call it mock service. Okay, so that test is now ready to fail. Hopefully, there we go. So expected discover to have been called, received expected discover but received state change instead. So that's complaining because it did get called, but it got called with the wrong arguments as far as the test is concerned. But I don't mind that it was called with the wrong arguments as long as it gets called eventually with the right ones. So let's change that to discover, and just for the sake of seeing the test fail with something different, hopefully now it should still, now it's complaining about the second argument, which it expected this function mock constructor, pardon me, that's obviously just a name that's being given to it because it's a spy. So let's change that to this dot app service dot so yeah, on discover. Now that's going to complain here, but the test will probably still pass because as far as the test knows, nope, it didn't. That's a syntax error. So yeah, as far as the test knows, there is an on discover method, so I would expect it to no, it's obeying the typing. So if I go to app service, I actually don't need get data anymore because I don't think it's being used, so I'm just going to rename that to on discover, have it return nothing, and just leave it empty for now. Hopefully that should all pass. And no, it won't, because of course I've got an end-to-end test. Let's just change that back to what it was. I don't like to make things easy for myself. So undiscover and void, and then just save that. So hopefully now we'll get a passing test. Check that out, I've got 4 people viewing the stream at the same time. One of them's probably me. I don't know if the other one's my wife. She's very charitable and opens up a browser window to boost my numbers. Oh, someone just disappeared. So as soon as I said, it's not you. No, I lost somebody as soon as I called out that I had 4 people on. Okay, we've got all the tests passing anyway. So now I want to implement the onDiscover, right? So I want to actually get those peripherals and add them to the service so that I can look them up later. So I'm going to use, I'm thinking I'll use RxJS, only because I like RxJS and I want to get better at it. And actually not only because of that, also because although I intend to implement like kind of a polling to get the values on the front end, eventually I'd like that to be pushing things out with WebSockets, and it feels like RxJS really lends itself to that. So what I want to do is in the app service spec, we'll have a describe on discover. So it should here's an interesting one. If I go back to the controller, have I set that up? This to app service to undiscover. Oh, that's okay. That's fine. So we passed in that method. So it doesn't say anything about how that method is called, because that's going to get passed to peripheral. So yeah, the signature that wants is actually matching this signature here for the listener. It'll return an event emitter. Okay, but it's just listening for. Oh no, so it returns void, but it's the on returns an event emitter. That's interesting. I'm not really looked into that. I'm going to go with the way that I know anyway, which is to provide that listener. So it's going to get past a peripheral. So I'll copy that type just for now and put it in here. App service. I'll just pop that in there so I don't forget. Now, strictly speaking, following TDD, I shouldn't really do that until I've got a test failing. But I'm about to write the test that would fail that anyway. So describe on discover before each. So I want to do let's rename service to unit, so I know it's the unit that I'm testing, and we'll do unit dot on discover, and we'll pass in a peripheral. So let p equals blah as peripheral, and I'm not going to actually give it a real peripheral, but I'm just going to give it a fake peripheral. I don't know whether it's going to let me do that. No, because it doesn't overlap enough with that type. I could do, I mean, to be fair, I could just type it as any. Just to really abuse TypeScript. So being any, it's completely flexible in terms of typings. Let's declare that outside of the before each, so I've got access to it in the tests. Let peripheral be of type any. Oops, and we'll assign it here. So unit dot on discover peripheral. Okay, what do I want it to do when it discovers that? I want it to add that peripheral to a list. So am I going to use RxJS? I'm not going to use RxJS yet. I'll do that in a refactor. It should store the peripheral in memory. So, given that this is going to be a public property that's being provided elsewhere, I expect I didn't want exec. Expect unit dot peripherals dot to equal, and then an array with that one peripheral in it. So it's going to complain right away that we don't have a peripherals property, so I'm going to go and add that under the service, and it's added it as a method. I didn't mean to do that at all. Let's try that again. So public peripherals be of type any array. So if I go back to the tests, it should be failing. Expected foo bar received undefined. That's fine. So back to the service. Now I can implement something real. I'm going to initialize that with an empty array, and then I'm just going to say this dot peripherals dot push peripheral. So just to give me somewhere to store that, and then I'm going to retrieve that in a separate endpoint request. Brilliant, that worked. So now if I go, although look, I've got, because I'm using a real start scan stuff. Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, I'm doing console.log for those, so that's fine. So I next want to create an endpoint on the controller that's going to read those peripherals out, and then given that hopefully should all work, I'm going to try to get it all working for reals. Like try it in the browser and see if I can scan and find my light bulb. If that works, I'll be happy and I can go to sleep. So have I still got anybody actually watching / listening? I can see 3 people are on the stream, but I just don't know who they are. I guess I could switch windows and go and check who they are, but if you're still around, say hi. Last here 2311. Okay, cool. So somebody obviously thinks that I'm worth listening to, or you're having trouble sleeping, and the sound of my monotonous droning voice is going to help you get over your insomnia. And if so, that's fine. Okay. Well, good. So I've got 2 of you here. Just bear in mind, I'm doing this for you guys so that you can eventually, one fine day, you can change the color of my light bulb using my Twitch chat. And if you missed the beginning, the reason I'm doing that rather than using Lumia Cove, which does provide the same functionality, is I'm a cheapskate and I've already got a smart bulb, but it's not Wi-Fi, it's only Bluetooth. So I'm writing a service so that I can use my laptop to transmit a Bluetooth signal to the smart bulb, and then I'll write another service that receives input from Twitch, stores that input in just a static value, not a static value, but just a single value on Heroku, and then my local API, which is what I'm currently writing, is going to read that value and update the bulb. So I'm doing this for you guys. What am I doing? So get peripherals. This is the controller. So yeah, I've got the peripherals endpoint, which I started writing a test for before. So let's uncomment that and fill something in. So we've got unit.getPeripherals. It should do something. It should, I guess, return a list of discovered peripherals. Now, I'm also missing actually a couple of tests. I've really gone for like the narrowest happy path when I'm testing here, because all I've done here is tested that when I discover the first new peripheral, that my array contains one new peripheral. Strictly speaking, so if I was doing TDD with a pairing partner, I'd probably pick someone who's quite pedantic like me, who would then write the next test and just pick holes in what I'd written. So it's very easy for me to just make that test pass, for example, by saying this dot peripherals equals peripheral. Right, that makes all the existing tests pass, as we should see in a second, or not. Oh, that one's failing because I've just uncommented a test that was deliberately set to fail. But notice the other 5 tests all passed, including the one that I know is broken. So really I need another test then that says, okay, well, if there's at least one already in the array, then it should push it in. However, firstly, we haven't got all the time in the world. Nobody's paying me to do this, so I'm gonna be lazy. And secondly, I know based on my implementation that is going to work. I'd rather go down the route of providing the minimum amount of tests, and then if a bug does crop up later, I then regression test it. Because something that simple, it's not going to benefit from having a load more tests around that one line, just to make sure that it's really, really locked down. So it should just return a list of discovered peripherals. So what I want to do is, before I call unit.getPeripherals, I'm going to create some mock peripherals. Now, I would go into, I've got a test library that I wrote for creating test factories, but I'm going to test data factories, sorry, but I'm going to do that probably in the next stream. For now, I'm just going to create a test data array, and I'm going to have foo : bar again there, and let's add a second one just to be on the safe side, foo bar 2. Okay, so if I wanted to return a list of discovered peripherals, what I expect is let's do let result be of type any. We'll do result equals unit.getPeripherals, and then expect result dot to equal let's stringify it. I don't know if I'm supposed to stringify it. Let's just return the result. Wait, that's terrible. Not expect result to equal result. Expect result to equal test data. So I haven't done anything with the test data yet. What I need to do is pass that test data to the mock service. So mock service dot peripherals equals test data. So it's really simple. I'm just testing that when I call get peripherals, it returns me the data that in a previous test I've asserted gets passed into the onDiscover method. So test data is never reassigned. Whoops, that's probably okay. I'm not actually mutating the data, but let me just be strict just to make sure. So test data equals that. So again, just to make sure that I get a fresh set of test data, maybe I'll end up mutating that data at some point, and I don't want it to bleed it through between tests. So that should now be a failing test. Good. So it got undefined back. So if I now go into my app controller again and call get peripherals, I'm going to have it return this dot service app service dot peripherals. I'm gonna have to rename that app service at some point, because that's not really what it is. It's a peripheral service, I guess. Oh, there we go. 6 passed. Okay, so let's see if this works. I mean, it feels like it's pretty close, if not actually just full on working. So if I've got localhost 333 at the moment. Let's hit start scan. So that's going to go and start. It hasn't given me any kind of output there, but I should be able to see here. Oh, cannot read properly, push of undefined. So we've got a first error there. So that's happening online. I'm looking at my stat trace here. Where the devil am I? Seller node 13.2. Interesting. I don't recognize any of that stat trace. Okay. But I do have a push in the in my code. Now it shouldn't be an undefined object that it's pushing into. Let's just double check. So public peripherals equals empty array. This dot peripherals dot push peripheral. So I mean, that seems pretty fine to me. So maybe it's not talking about my about my code. So I'm gonna do the typical Jamie thing of just littering my code here now with console.logs, just so that there are definitely better ways to debug your code. You shouldn't be using console.log for everything. You should be stepping through your code, but do as I say, not as I do. So it hits the undiscover. Okay, that's fine. Let's just add a one after here. Just see, did it get to part 2? Okay, hit the endpoint again, and it hits on discover, and then so it is that push by the looks of it. This dot peripherals dot push. Interesting. Let's log out what it thinks this dot peripherals is, because that is not that should be instantiated as an empty array. It's undefined. Oh wait, yeah, okay. Interesting. So maybe I'm missing something here. That's a class. I've got a public peripherals property, and let's try setting it in a constructor. It seems odd. This dot peripherals equals empty array. Is it maybe something to do with it? It's not to do with the test bed, because my tests are actually passing. It's to do with the real implementation. And it doesn't like it there either. So I suspect it's maybe more to do with this. So it could be that the context in which that class is being executed isn't correct. If it's not really a class under the hood, maybe. I mean, it says it's a class here, right? So it should be fine. Let's log what this is, what it thinks this is, because yeah, okay. Let's go back to here. Refresh. So, Fitler can't read push of undefined. Oh, so this is what it's logged. So it's on discover noble. Okay, so noble is okay. I see what's happening here. So because because of the way that I'm passing the function in, it's maintaining the context incorrectly, which is hopefully an easy enough fix. So the question is, should I write a test for that first? The answer is yes, I should, but the other answer is it's 10 to 10. I'd kind of like to wrap this up by 10. So let's skip writing a test for that, despite what I said about regression testing earlier. Again, do as I say, not as I do. So I'm going to just call on discover. I'm going to pass the peripheral in, get a peripheral there and pass it here. Now, because I'm now using a fat arrow function, it means the context of this becomes the context of this controller rather than the context of noble. And then when I call this.appService.undiscover, the context should be correct there as well. So let's scroll down to the bottom there, hit start scan, and keep our fingers crossed. And it looks good. It hit undiscover 2. So now we can actually see that updating as it discovers new devices. So this is good. If I now hit the peripherals endpoint, do I get some peripherals out? Peripherals, and I get an internal server error. Brilliant. So what did I get there? Starting an object. Oh, because it's trying to convert it to JSON and it's a circular structure. Okay, that's a quick fix. So what we're going to do is let's create a peripheral DTO type or interface. So peripheral.ts. So I'm going to import the peripheral type from noble. Peripheral from noble. Again, abandon where noble. Abandon all hope ye who enter this Twitch stream. So I then want to export interface peripheral DTO. DTO standing for data transfer object, for anyone who didn't already know that. And what I'm going to do is just go to the peripheral class, and I'm going to pick out all of the where is it? Oh, there. All of those properties there. Now I can do this by going to here and just basically pasting them in here. That now gives me something that matches, providing I pull out the right types there. But actually, TypeScript has a really handy utility types collection, so you can extend another type quite easily. So if I just take all of those and I put them, I'm trying to remember if I have to put those in as a string. I think I have to put them as a string, so let's surround them in quotes and put a pipe between each one, and it all will hopefully become clear. That's not going to be an interface anymore, it's going to be a type. The two are largely the same, but the interface allows you to get a little bit more granular with what the type is, I think. And we're going to use the pick type. So pick allows me to take an existing type, in this case peripheral, and provide a list of the properties that I want to pull off of that type. So it'll preserve the type for each one of those, and it saves me having to repeat the interface. So I think if I just get rid of that, there we go. So that now the peripheral DTO, if we hover over it, you can see it's got all of the properties that I want to keep, but it hasn't got any of the functions and so on. Now hopefully that's going to be enough. Let's go back to oh, but I probably want to also export a function so that's not going to be enough. Good night, wife. That's not going to be enough to fix the problem. What I need to do is export a function that's going to take in a peripheral and export a peripheral DTO. So export get peripheral DTO, export function, get no export const. Wow, I've got more people on the stream now. I thought I'd get less as we got closer to bedtime, but I've actually got more. Welcome. So get peripheral DTO is going to be a function that's going to take in a peripheral. A peripheral of type peripheral, and it's going to return a peripheral DTO. So easiest way to do that is probably just for me to grab all of these again. I tell you what, I'm going to grab them off of here again. Let's copy that and just return a new object, and using Control D. If you're curious about what the devil I'm doing, where I've now got multiple cursors, I wrote a blog on this exact topic, and if you look at my my Medium blog, which you can see about where if I can see my own camera, see about here. There's a one called this Visual Studio Code shortcut will change your life, and it really will. You get to do all the kind of cool stuff that I'm doing now. So I do that, and I need to copy all of those. Copy, do paste equals peripheral dot ID. I was close. I didn't quite get them all. Why didn't that quite work? I ended up with, oh no, that is right, yeah. Okay. So address ID, it doesn't like that. Why doesn't it like address ID? Is address ID a thing? Oh, it's because I've gotten the undo. I ended up with ID. That's why I got it wrong. So copy, paste, undo, peripheral dot, and then paste, and then comma. That's better. Okay, if I got it right the first time, it would have been alright. It would have been a lot more impressive. Okay, so now I've got a peripheral DTO and I've got a method to get me the DTO. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because the problem that I'm having is that when I try to return the array of peripherals, it's a circular structure, so it can't convert it to JSON. If I pass it through the get peripheral DTO method first, then it should just work. So let's get rid of all of these. Now I don't want to convert it when I push it into the array because I'll actually need some of those methods. But when I return it in the controller, then what I want to do is that's not the one. App.controller.ts. So I take the array of peripherals and I will map it to. So I could provide the anonymous function in there, but I'm actually just going to link to a function that I know happens to take in an array of sorry, to take in a peripheral. So import get peripheral DTO from where was it now? Oh, was it in app types peripheral? So if I save that, I'm not even going to check the tests right now. So the peripherals at the moment now, it's not failing because it's empty. But if I hit start scan and then go back to peripherals, there we go. So now I can see all of the items that are returned. So and if I refresh that, depending on how quickly it's managed to find all of the items that are in range, it should keep discovering more devices. So unfortunately, it seems to have discovered all the devices very, very quickly. So that's, I think, everything that I'm going to cover for tonight. I would open the floor up to questions, but I mean, you guys have had the opportunity to ask questions all night. Have you got any questions? Or, I mean, I dare say some of you that are on the stream probably know me anyway, and you can just ask me those questions in person. But I'm happy to answer them now. And if not, just tell me to go to bed. Sounds like that's a negative. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope it's been an educational experience. I've certainly enjoyed it. It's I'm really impressed by Nest, just in terms of it. As I said at the beginning of the stream, it kind of takes all the things that I love about Angular and makes it so that I can now develop my entire full stack application using that same kind of pattern. And also, you know, in terms of testing as well, I really like the dependency injection approach. I know I've talked to some JavaScript developers who really aren't a fan of using object orientation and dependency injection in JavaScript. That JavaScript is supposed to be more of a functional language, but I think maybe that's where JavaScript and TypeScript diverge a little bit. TypeScript's got very much more of a C# kind of mentality, but without losing any of the real flexibility that you get in JavaScript. So that's it. I will almost certainly pick this up again. I'm quite enjoying playing with Nest, and I do actually want to build something rather than just abandoning lots of projects along the road to knowledge. So yeah, watch out for a future stream where I pick this up again. Thanks for joining me, and good night.